Thank you again to our wonderful partner, the General Consulate of Canada, and to Raymond and to Elena. And now I'd like to also welcome another one of our fabulous partners, Africa Founders Factory Fund. We have Sam Sturm, who's going to be joined by, again, of Sony. We really appreciate Sony's time within this program. They're doing a lot of illumination on different areas of opportunity. We've got Austin speaking later today about sports, and he was on stage yesterday with Raymond of Canada. But again, thank you very much for being here from Sony. He's the chair of Sony Ventures, and to speak about the new fund that was created to support founders out of Africa. It's an important initiative, and Sam, thanks for all the great work you've been doing to support that emerging market as well. So Sam, and again, please take seats. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I am Sam Sturm, co-founder, as Christina said, of Founders Factory Africa. We are the largest, most active early stage fund on the continent. We've been investing 5.5 years. We're out of our second fund, have a portfolio across a range of sectors of roughly 70 ventures now. So we, as I said, have spent a lot of time learning about the market, investing in the market, and I'm excited for this conversation with Gen. For those that may have less context, so yesterday I spoke about the Africa opportunity writ large and why we're excited about the venture opportunity, particularly for corporates on the continent. Corporates make up most of our LP base. But for those people who in the room might have a little less context, two quick slides to share. This one is actually from an article published yesterday in Rest of World. If anyone doesn't know Rest of World, it's a wonderful tech publication that looks at emerging markets beyond the core sectors, about Visa and MasterCard and the tremendous amounts of money that they are pouring into the continent. Again, serendipitously, this was published yesterday. MasterCard recently paid $200 million for 4% of MTN's mobile money business. So again, massive investment in a massive space on the continent. The other slide is to set you up a little bit again, and what you've been doing. And this is, for those who might not be aware, Sony set up last year a $10 million fund focused on investing on the continent, and then just recently announced their first investment into Carry1st, which is an African game developer, one of the most exciting startups on the continent, which has received tremendous investment from a number of global, both corporate and institutional investors. And we'll talk about that a little bit. But for context, again, for those who might be a little less familiar with the continent and what's going on. Before we start talking about these, do you want to, again, maybe talk about the fund in general and Sony Ventures and how you guys think about corporate venturing broadly?
Yes, thanks, Sam.
Yeah, of course.
And I just found out that Sam is helping some of the efforts by my team, who's exploring Africa right now. So it's really a small world.
Yeah.
This is probably my 7th summit to attend, and I really recommend GCV to everyone. That this is a great conference and a great place to learn. And so let's talk a little bit about Sony Innovation Fund. So we've been at this for about 8 years. Fund size is in excess of 500 million US. We also invest in the early stage. So the companies we invested total up to somewhere around 170 companies. And we have teams in the US, Europe, Israel, India, and Japan. And so Africa is in the works right now. And and we invest in entertainment, healthcare, fintech, many areas that you guys are all looking as well. And
so I guess the natural next question: why Africa as the next market? Why a small fund albeit, but why a fund dedicated to the continent? How does that fit into the way you guys are thinking about the world?
So we've been looking at Africa for many, many years, especially the creative teams within Sony. And we feel that not just the growth within Africa, but we feel that the Africa content has a great potential to go global. And we've already are seeing some of that. You see some African players come out in the Grammy Awards, and you see African content consumed quite heavily on YouTube and whatnot. But that growth we think could be a lot more bigger, and so this is more of an exploration project, and we're going in there to really try to learn what's going on in Africa.
I appreciate that, and I think that point you made, and again, we work with a number of global corporates, and the idea of, the question I always get asked is, we know that Africa is important, as you said, as a market, right? For 7 of the 10 fastest growing economies in the world are on the continent. It is the youngest population, right? By 2030, I believe it is, 75% of the continent is going to be under 35, right? 20% of the youth population in the world lives on the continent. And you have a continent that's growing exponentially, right? It's going to by 2050, 25% of the world's population is going to live in sub-Saharan Africa, right? So you cannot be ignored. And the question I get often is like, we just don't have line of sight into it. And so for you guys, this idea of going in eyes open, thinking of it almost, you and I talked a little bit about R&D rather than M&A at this point. Talk to me how you guys think about, again, that idea of exploration and balancing the risk reward of a market that is, for still unexplored and still where you guys may not, again, have boots on the ground in operations to maybe know it as well.
So already Sony Music is on the ground, and Sony Pictures is also on the ground. And there's a lot of interesting artists we're digging up through them. But I think everyone would agree that in this day and age, Hollywood content obviously is great, but I think there could be more interesting IP that you can cultivate or find out in many different parts of the world. And we think that the colorful African content has a lot of potential appeal to the larger global crowd.
So the idea of, again, we see this with fintechs as well, moving some of our ventures that have started in South Africa, Kenya, and have gone to other emerging markets and then global markets. I think, if you look at, as you mentioned, Afrobeats is not just an African genre anymore. It really is a global genre of music now.
Yes. No, I totally understand that. Obviously, in terms of the Africa venture market in general, that it's more of the telecom play, the water play, the infrastructure play, and the supply chain play, and that's all going to grow, and I think we get that. But I think when we look at the content side, it's still an underinvested area, and like for instance, Nigeria has a very big potential and a big population of people looking at creating content.
Yeah.
And it expands also into anime. It also expands into 3D type of activities. There's a lot going on, I think we're finding out.
That's amazing. Why now? I'm curious about the timing.
So I told you we were looking at it for 3-4 years, but and we were actually co-working with our business development group within us. But the true fact is that do these big teams go to Africa that often? Not really.
Yeah, sure.
And so it was this process was a little bit slow. So as we talked with management and said that, okay, let's rather put money into the African entrepreneurs who know what they're doing and who are really trying to come out and really try to learn from them. And that's probably the faster step. The reason, I think you pointed this point, but the reason why we are capped it at a 10 million fund to start with is because as in total, we're managing in excess of 500 million US. So, obviously the financial returns are very important to us, and we have lots of limited partners that we need to make sure that they get great attention and they get great returns. And to this point, we've only invested in areas we have somebody on the ground and do good research before we start to invest. But in Africa, I think we felt that the base knowledge we have is actually quite limited. Going into India and going into Africa was a little bit different for us because we already, as Sony, we already have owned the second largest cable company in India, and for even for electronic sales, and there's a software center, and there's lots of infrastructure we have. So the collective knowledge Sony had regarding India was much higher. So we felt that we could go in from day one. But in terms of Africa, capping it and really investing and learning basic things from, we thought was very important. And, like for instance, the currency fluctuations are much higher than we initially assumed, but, that doesn't negate the case. The case still stands that Africa could be a very good, big potential in terms of growth.
Yeah, for those who maybe less connected, currency devaluation in Nigeria, I think it's been 70. The naira has dropped, I believe, 70% this year alone. So they are real. But I think to your point, maybe the short-term fluctuations don't outweigh the long-term potential. I'm curious. You keep talking about going in eyes open to learn, engaging directly with ventures because that's the best way to learn. I know it has not been a long time, so maybe the answer is we don't know yet, but what have you guys learned thus far? I'm curious.
So, basically, in terms of the actual teams, we have the European team, our European team has stepped up to go, and they're going once in 3 months for an extensive 2-3 weeks, and then coming back and continuing to do that every 3 months. And at the same time, we're trying to hire somebody on the ground so that we can have constant communication with the startups. There is immense excitement, and but of course, when you start ticking the box based on your typical investment, let's say in the United States, there are many boxes you cannot tick, like, for instance, the governance structure, whatnot. So, but it's also true that because there are some, unknowns in terms of the, like, let's say the corporate structure, it's just maybe just our ignorance, but not. Many of the companies that we are talking to have actually incorporated in Delaware or in the UK, and have their business operations in Africa, so that it makes it easier for us to get in and understand what's going on.
Yep, we see a lot of that. The way you guys have structured this is obviously unique in partnership with IFC. I imagine that made it easier. There's a little bit of maybe catalytic capital there. This blended capital model makes it de-risks for you a little bit. I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about how you guys have structured that with IFC as a partner.
Well, we were actually initially quite surprised when, obviously as Sony, we have lots of discussions with IFC in general, but we were quite, our eyes opened when we heard that IFC was interested in working with us in trying to cultivate content in Africa, because I thought they were more into the big infrastructures, but more of these cultural things, the creative things, have become quite high on IFC's plate, and it's actually a natural thought, which I didn't know IFC thinks this way, but it's not, you can't just build bridges and make ports to make a country really affluent, but you need to have the cultural aspect, and if you have great entertainment potential, and that can result in the African people really making good income and good life, and that's all contributes to how they are trying to help the Africa. So we're seeing we're seeing more excitement from the IFC people than we thought. And obviously, they know everything that's going on in the ground, and they can. Still, there are places that we should stay away from, just in terms of security, and those things, they guide us quite nicely on that. So it's been a good co-working relationship. So basically, there's no, we don't bind each other. We jointly look at opportunities, we communicate opportunities, and then and investments are done independently by each of the units.
Got it. And they've also, if I'm not mistaken, they've also committed $10 million up to $10 million to the investment partnership. Is that accurate?
Well, there are more, as you know, when they start investing, there are more bigger,
Yeah, of course.
bigger animals. So I mean, they have many pockets. So I mean, that's pretty much up to them. We have a collaboration agreement, and that's basically what the basis of the cooperation.
Amazing. We have about 5 minutes left. I'm curious, talk about, so you guys did your first deal.
Yes.
Carry First.
Yes.
Which is a gaming company out of South Africa originally.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that deal, about the venture, and why you guys were excited about that as the first opportunity.
So Carry First is a game publisher, but also it has a digital payment platform management. And so I think what's interesting to find out about many of these startups in Africa is that one is that they're really trying to come out with themselves and really show, I have great content, type of, or I have a great team, people who can make great content. That's one approach. But they're also at the same time trying to do some good for the African society, and and obviously this digital payment is not just for games. It's for all digital commerce. So they're trying to do some good by providing a framework so that the local people can do more digital transactions. So I think it's not necessarily a combination you see here, but it's a combination that you see in Africa, because that's the state of Africa.
Yeah, embedded, growing a business on the continent and being able to embed payments, and in many cases, therefore having to become an infrastructure company, a payment provider. That is something we see for a lot of the larger businesses that have to sort of build it themselves to have the infrastructure to accept the payments that will let them grow. I'm curious, when thinking about this deal, obviously the PlayStation business unit, how much were you guys thinking about, again, this as a direct feeder into one of your business units and the growth of that business unit, and how much was it, this is an interesting deal, as you said, there's the potential to start really have a global audience for content and cultural export. How did you guys think about that?
Yeah, but Sony's Innovation Fund is basically operating as a no strings attached, thinking that we don't get approval from the business groups, but we basically go in as the investment, and of course these are startups, so they have their priorities, so that when time comes, when appropriate, we make sure that we connect them to the right business unit within Sony. So I think at this point, this is more, there could be potential excitement down the road, but first, it's really all about trying to, financially help the startup, and for us to learn what's really going on. And this is not like a 6 months process. This is a this is a more longer term, 4 or 5 year process at least. So that's what we've gone into, and we're quite excited about it.
Last question, what does success in your mind? You're a $500 million plus fund. This is a $10 million commitment. It's a drop in the bucket. I'm curious what success for this vehicle looks like in your mind, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road.
Success for this vehicle means that basically that we find out, we come to a direction on what to do next in terms of Africa. And so, obviously there's a lot of discussion, which I also engage in, regarding, financial return and strategic return for CVCs. And obviously financial return is very important to us, and I think, we're hanging in there in terms of that. But at the same time, we need to do new explorations, and this is one of them.
That's amazing. Do you have a timeline for? Do you guys have you put a? Is it a 5 year? Is it a 10-year? How will you know when you've learned enough? I guess is my question.
Well, we probably met more than 100 companies at this point, and we made our first investment. So it's a bit early to tell. And but we're chugging along and getting things going on.
I appreciate that. And I have to let you know, as I said, when Sony announced that you guys were opening this fund, you can imagine how many sort of Africa investor WhatsApp groups I am part of, and the frequency with which that news was posted, and the excitement, just the venture community that a CVC of Sony's scope and prestige and sort of vision is on the continent is something that everyone is very excited about. So again, thank you for talking.
And Sam, looking forward to your help.
Well, listen, the more we get to work together, the better. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you, everyone.